Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered. We are so glad that you are joining us today. And we are off location technically, and I actually have a guest with me today. He's my friend. He's my co-ministry partner. His name is Dave Bailey. What's up, Dave?
Hey, man, it's a good day in the neighborhood.
It is a good day.
It's a good sunny day in the neighborhood.
Well, it's sunny where we are.
Absolutely.
Saturday morning. And hey, this is actually Dave's first time of being on the show. And trust me, you'll be glad he's here. This man has a ton of wisdom and knowledge about topics that I discuss all the way around anyway. And so today, let me just kind of share with you a couple of the topics that we're going to be discussing. We're going to be talking a little bit about the critical race theory. And that's going to be in our maybe in the meat and potato segment, or maybe towards the end. We'll kind of see how this flows. We got a story about the city of Chicago is experimenting on giving away permanent stimulus checks with no strings attached. I read the story earlier on, and it is crazy to me what they are getting ready to do. We'll talk more about that. We also have several small articles like the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about the Michigan school shootings. We're going to talk about transgender athletes competing in the world surf competition. We'll have this day in history, and then who knows what else we will find throughout the show. So if this is your first time listening to Unfiltered, remember, Unfiltered is a platform for me to share on social, political, and biblical topics from a pastor's perspective. Yes, I am a pastor out in St. Clair, Missouri, of the church, Roots Church. And this is a platform for me to be able to talk about things that I normally wouldn't talk about on a Sunday, but I absolutely think it's important to discuss some of the topics that are out there in everyday life. And that is exactly what this is about. And listen, I get that some of you are not going to like what I have to say, and that is okay. You have the right to be wrong.
I guess you do.
I mean, they have the right to be wrong, Dave. That's just kind of a little saying I have. And so you can text me. You can go to the Real Talk Radio app, and you can let us know what you think about the topic we're talking about. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Or better yet, maybe you have a topic that you would like for me to tackle, a particular subject. I'd love to do that. Here's the number that you can text me on, and that is 314-924-4215. Again, that number is 314-924-4215. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started on the very first topic, and that is, let's talk about this story in Chicago about the stimulus checks. Let me kind of read the headline. It basically says, $500 a month, no strings. Chicago experiments with a guaranteed income. Now, Dave, I don't know about you, but when I hear that just already freaks me out a little bit. That the government is going to give away guaranteed money. I know it's only $500 a month, but for some people, that's a lot of money when they're doing nothing.
In addition to other income they may have.
In addition to, yes. So it says here that Christopher Ellington Southside Photography Studio crashed in 2020 with the onset of the pandemic. And by March of 2021, he was scraping by on tax preparation and financial advice business when gunshots rang out one day as he was leaving work. 2 bullets from the drive-by shooting pierced his head and left him permanently blind. Now, of course, that's very sad, and you hate to hear that. And so the creditors were closing in on, he was getting rent notices piling up. There was just no money for him to pay his bills. And then out of nowhere, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, the administration, the first of the year's worth of, they're going to give away $500 checks. And it literally says, with no strings attached and almost no questions asked. What do you think about that? I mean, you're a retired man right now.
Well,
you worked your butt off all year to get a good pension and to invest in your future. And here's, this mayor giving away $500 checks.
Well, they're going to pick 5,000 city residents to give this money to. And to me, that's like what government does all the time. They pick winners and losers. And they decide, we're going to give something to this group. And the truth of the matter is Mayor Lightfoot is up for a re-election. And so this is a nice campaign donation.
Ooh, that's a good point. I didn't even know that. She's up for re-election. Listen, this lady is out of her mind anyway. We all know that she's out of her mind. And I want to read to you, though, because I was reading the story and I found something interesting that he said. Let me see if I can scroll down here where it was. I found it because it said it actually was talking about, I don't know where it went actually, Dave. The bottom line is this whole thing is insane for me. Insane for me to even think. This is the exact reason why businesses are struggling getting people to work.
Exactly.
It's because when you have the government forking out our taxpayer money, right? It'd be their taxpayer money for the state of Illinois or for the city of Chicago. Their taxpayer money.
Who's already broke, by the way. The state of Illinois is broke already.
And they are giving away free money to people. Sure, I'm sure they need it. I'm sure they're in desperate need. There's no doubt. But is that what this has come to? Is that what our world has come to? I mean, what do you think?
It's really sad that we haven't learned any lesson from our past, right? Because there's historical data that tells us where this road leads over time, right? And once you start down that road, there's no end, right? And I can remember back in the 90s when we had to put a lid on people enjoying welfare.
Right.
Because at that time, they were able to do it unlimited time. And even President Clinton at that time knew that was a problem and decided to put a lid on it where you could only have welfare for 5 years. And then you had to find a way to sustain yourself.
Well, this even says right here, this is what's crazy. The income cutoff for Chicago and Cook County is forgiving 250% of the federal poverty level. It says $36,450 a year for an individual and $75,000 for a family of 4. So if you're making $75,000 or less, you get a $500 check.
Exactly.
That is insane. Insane. Right. I don't even understand the thinking of these people. And let me tell you something, people listening right now. This is exactly what the government wants. They're just dangling the little carrot out there for you to take a little bit of money here and then for you to depend on them. And there's going to be a day where they're going to give you a little more. And eventually everybody's going to get the same amount of money and everybody's going to be doing the same amount of thing. And they're going to have complete control over every single American that does this.
Exactly. This is socialism.
This is exactly what socialism is.
It's what it leads to, for sure.
It leads to socialism. It's absolutely insane. And I'm telling you, we have got to wake up. And I get it. If you're in a tough spot, $500 a month sounds good. I mean, heck, for a lot of people, that's a house payment, or rent. Or that might be half of most people's rent. But depending on where you're living, if you're in a impoverished area, sure, you could probably find an apartment for $500 a month or $800 a month. It's a car payment. That's groceries for the month. That $500 is a lot of money.
Exactly.
And it adds up.
They already have plans to take this program, nationwide. And they're looking at how there's this organization called the National Association of Counties who are putting together a network of county level basic income programs. So they're already talking about expanding this, not just in Chicago, but nationwide, all over the nation.
I found what this guy said. The guy that got shot in the head, who now is blind or whatever, or in one eye. He said, "Talk about shock," said Ellington, who's 32 years old. It was, "Hey, this is quote, hey, the government's doing this? Wait a minute. You mean I don't have to, report this and report that, and you don't have to go through all of my business and I don't have to watch what I say?" I was like, this is how it should be. That is literally the thought behind this young man's thinking is, you mean to tell me I don't have to report whatever I'm making? I can just get an extra $500 a month no matter, as long as I'm not making over $75,000? This stuff is insane. And listen, this is just the beginning of what we got to look forward to. And I know we don't have a lot of time to keep talking about it because we're getting ready to go into a break. And when we come back, we're actually going to talk a little bit about this day in history, because I love the topic of what happened on this day in history many, many years ago. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in just a minute. All right, we are back from the break, and my blood pressure's calmed down just a little bit. Went and got a little drink of water, went out and got a little fresh air, because, man, that stuff just gets me all excited and frustrated all at the same time. But let's read what happened in this day in history on February 18th in 1885. That was just a few years ago. Dave, I don't think you were born yet at that time.
It wasn't even a thought in anybody's mind.
But this is pretty cool, because I'm a huge Mark Twain fan. And it says right here that Mark Twain publishes The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. On February 18th, 1885, Mark Twain publishes his famous and famously controversial novel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Twain first introduced Huck Finn as the best friend of Tom Sawyer, hero of tremendously successful novel The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. That happened in 1876, though Twain saw Huck's story as a kind of sequel to his earlier book. The new novel was for more serious, focusing on the institution of slavery and other aspects of life in the antebellum South. Now, at the book's heart, it is the journey of Huck and his friend Jim, a runaway enslaved person, down the Mississippi River on a raft. Jim runs away because he is about to be sold and separated from his wife and children, and Huck goes with him to help him get to Ohio and find freedom, basically. And Huck narrates the story in his distinctive voice, offering colorful descriptions of people, places that they are encountering along the way. The most striking part of the book is its satire. How do you say that? Satire. How do you say that word?
Satirical.
Satirical look at racism, religion, and other social attitudes of this time. Now, it's been a long time since I've read this book. Do you remember?
Too.
I mean, it's been a long time. I remember it in school. I think, as a matter of fact, a lot of people had to read this particular book.
Absolutely.
Because, it's a huge part of history of what was really going on. I mean, here it even says in 1885, 2 decades after the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of the Civil War, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn landed with a splash. A month after its publication, a Concord, Massachusetts library banned the book, calling its subject matter tawdry, which, again, how many times do we see this kind of stuff?
Sounds familiar.
I mean, it's like it never is. We've been dealing with this crap since the 1800s, late 1800s, people, and it's never going to go away. But recently, in 1998, an Arizona parent sued her school district, claiming that making Twain's novel required in high school reading made already existing racial tensions even worse. This is the part of this day in history that frustrates me. I am tired of people taking history and making it out to be that we have to stop doing it because they're offended by it.
Kind of reminds me of Aunt Jemima.
Yeah, of course.
Or
Aunt Jemima.
Land O'Lakes butter.
I mean, come on. Aunt Jemima would be completely upset that they have changed that whole name, the label, the whole 9 yards.
I don't get it.
What kind of world are we living in? What kind of world? I mean, this is what I love about you being in here now, is the fact that you grew up. You're not that much older than me.
No.
But you are a few years older than me. And you've been around longer than I have. And you've seen some of these things early on in life, where even for myself being, I'll be 48 next month. I just can't believe some of the things that we are seeing today. When it comes to the history, comes to racism, this is one reason why we're going to talk about critical race theory probably at the end of the show.
I think some people are always looking for a problem with a solution. They're looking for a problem that they can solve.
Yeah, a problem.
Right.
But the problem is you're never going to solve this. The only way we are going to solve racism is to stop talking about racism.
Amen.
Stop talking about and segregating. I mean, we could go on and on and on, about what is going on out there. It's just, I don't know. It's crazy. Let's see if there's anything else in here that's really important that happened on this day. And I'm not going to talk about that. Not going to talk about that. There's a lot of things. Here you go. Ray Charles records What I Say at Atlantic Records in 1959. You remember that?
Wow, I remember that song. I probably sang that song back in the day.
Yeah. Pluto was discovered in 1930.
Is it a planet?
Yeah.
Which one of those planets did they like?
Pluto was once believed to be the 9th planet. It's discovered at the Lau Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona by an astronomer, Clyde Tombaugh.
Okay.
So there you go. That's pretty cool. Well, let's talk about something that's going on right now, and that is the Super Bowl happened. Did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did.
I got to tell you, the Chiefs got away with a call there at the end.
Oh, no. Don't
Come on, man. That was a janky call. I think the refs are on their side. But needless to say, a lot of people were worried about the halftime show because of Rihanna. And listen, I'm not a big fan, of Rihanna, honestly. But I got to at least say everybody kept their clothes on. There was very little sexual stuff that went on. There was no LGBTQ.
Right.
There was no, there wasn't, nakedness going on.
Right.
There was at least, at the very least, it was, it was decent. I give it decent, but it wasn't, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it was probably just enough to keep your attention and, give you a time for.
And we found out she was pregnant.
We did.
She's pregnant. So
after the fact.
And really the thing that caught my attention is how they had those platforms so high in the air. That was pretty wicked, man. You got to have a lot of guts to get up there on that platform with no side rails. Mm. I know they were tied down, but still, that's pretty crazy. But for me, the talk of the Super Bowl, in my opinion, was the national anthem. Chris Stapleton knocked it out of the park. And I even got emotional, right? His rendition was phenomenal. People talking it everywhere. The coach for the Philadelphia Eagles was crying. Jason Kelsey was crying. I'm sure there were many other people brought to tears because of why? Because of what America stands for, right?
Right.
It's exactly the realness of what it stands for. And you know what's even better? There was nobody kneeling. Hallelujah. Come on, man. That is something to celebrate. However, Darius Rucker, when you look at his article, Darius Rucker actually felt like there was some disrespect when it came to the national anthem. And he said right here, where's it at? He said, I just saw grown men keep their hats on during the national anthem, and that really sucked. Otherwise, awesome job, Chris Stapleton. You killed it. We only got about a minute, Dave, but what do you feel? Do you feel like because, today it's different, right? Today, wearing a hat at a dinner table is different than what it used to be years ago. It's different wearing it in a church, right? People wear their hats in a church all the time. We wear them on stage. I wore them preaching before, right? But you're a little more old school. I'm looking at you cringing right now. Tell me.
Not just a little old school. I'm very old school. I'm traditional in that regard.
Okay.
There's just some things, to me, we still hold near and dear. And when the anthem is played, there's a certain ritual that you go through. I definitely show respect and honor.
Yeah, I definitely feel like during the national anthem, we need to remove our hats. I think that tradition should still stay alive. Yeah. But it doesn't offend me as much because I know we're living in a different age. What offends me more is kneeling during the national anthem. Right?
I get it.
So I would trade off the kneeling for the hat wearing.
Oh, absolutely.
Any day.
Absolutely.
Anyway, Darius Rucker, love the man. Used to be Hootie and the Blowfish. If you're not sure, country boy Darius Rucker is a very patriotic man.
Hats off to Darius Rucker.
There you go. Let's take a break. We'll be right back in just a minute. All right, we're back from the break. And man, I can't tell you how fast time flies when you have a friend in studio talking about the things that you're passionate about and just trying to help educate people to have way more common sense than what we see out there. Because right now, what is wrong is right, what is right is wrong, and what used to be common sense is now stupidity.
Yeah, up is down, in is out. It's just
everything's backwards.
It
So
really does seem that way.
we're in the third segment. I call this the meat and potato segment. And if you don't know why, it's because, when you want a substance meal, you eat, for a man anyway, you eat meat and potatoes. That's just what we do. I mean, Dave, we went to Valentine's Day, right? We took our took our spouses out, and what did we eat? Meat and potatoes.
Oh, absolutely.
I had a 12-ounce prime rib, medium rare, with a baked potato.
I had a 12-ounce New York strip baked potato.
Exactly. Meat and potatoes. Why? Because it fills you up. It's a hearty meal. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this topic to me is going to be a hearty topic, and it's simple. There was an article on the Daily Wire that read, "The View piles on Republican host," right? They piled on this Republican host. Where's my article? Here it is. Let me read the title. "The View piles on Republican host for daring to say mental health is related to shootings." And this all stems from the shooting that happened Monday evening at the Michigan State University campus, killing, how many? Is like 2 or 3 kids? I think three.
Killed 3, and I think it injured 2 or 3. I'm not sure exactly.
Again, nobody wants any type of shooting to happen, any type of mass shooting in a school, in a church, in a business, out on the street. I mean, we just saw a UPS truck or something run over a bunch of people. I forget where it was, and it ain't Vegas, it's somewhere else, right. Deliberately. These are terrible acts of violence, there's no doubt. But the struggle that I have, of course, with the View is they're just so left and liberal anyway. I'm surprised they even have a Republican host on there. But you got to, right? Stir up a little controversy.
Well, that's what makes it go around, right? I mean, that's...
Exactly. But they're talking about gun control. This Republican, her name is Griffin, right?
Right.
Yeah, Alyssa Griffin.
Right.
She's basically conceded that, she would support some additional gun control measures, saying that she was in favor of a broader background checks and red flag laws, but then argued that individual firearm ownership was protected in the Constitution and that should not ever be changed. Legal gun ownership is fundamental in this country, she said. But the co-host, Sonny Hostin, brought up the AR-15 and was complaining about how, the shooter at MSU likely used a handgun, not an AR. So why are you going to bring up the AR?
Right.
They used a handgun, and he, or she, I don't know who Sonny is actually. I'm assuming it's a lady.
I think it's female.
It's a female, yeah. I don't watch The View. I'm never going to watch The View because it's a bunch of nonsense anyway.
Right.
But it referred to a weapon of mass destruction. The AR-15 is referred to as a weapon of mass destruction. Now, I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to link you guys in on a little bit of knowledge. I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I will tell you this: guns don't kill people. I'm going to let that sink in for a minute. I'm going to say it again. I want you to listen to what I'm telling you. Guns don't kill people. People kill people, and they use weapons called knives, guns, their hands, bats, cars.
UPS vans.
I mean, people kill people. Guns didn't just, that AR or that handgun didn't just pop up by itself, walk over there and shoot Michigan State people. Didn't happen.
Right.
There was a finger behind the trigger. The question is, and what sparked this little conversation is, Miss Griffin believes that most, if not all, gun or school shootings has to do with mental health issues. And I'm going to say I 100% agree. You cannot be in your right mind. You cannot be sane. And you just can't. You cannot be sane and go kill somebody. What do you think?
I believe you probably are true. I mean, that's true.
I mean, there's got to be a mental...
You have a mental condition, and then we have to get back to what caused the mental condition. There has to be...
And she even says, we have a crisis of young men in this country. What's she talking about? They have mental issues is because they're fatherless.
Right.
They have no man in the home training them, disciplining them, correcting them, spanking that booty.
Yep.
And so here you got young boys out there running amok, mentally disturbed because maybe their dad told them they were a loser. Maybe their dad's not around. I don't know. But you've dealt with this, Dave. You've been in the Senate, right?
The political arena for a long time.
You've been in the political arena a long time.
Story is old. It's an old story.
Yeah, I mean, talk to me just a little bit about what we've been dealing with for this many years when it comes to gun control.
We first of all, we have knee-jerk reaction every time something like this happens. There's a lot of proactive conversation going on, but it's just conversation. And we all know, we've talked about this for decades, that when we decided to take God out of the schools and then prayer out of the schools, we took the family out of the family nucleus is broken down. You got to agree with me that is the main thing that started us down this slippery slope so many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And until we fix that, till we get a solution for that, this is not going to get any better. It's time to stop blaming and pointing fingers and going back to exactly what the real issue is. Fatherless homes, God taken out of our schools, and prayer taken out. I believe that's where it's at.
I do too.
Because we have to rebuild the family nucleus.
The left will not touch the mental health side of this issue, and the right don't want to touch the gun side of the issue because the right says we have a right to bear arms. It's in the amendment. And yes, that's true. The left is saying, let's stop blaming the mental health on these gun violence. But the truth of the matter is, what the left isn't understanding, the mental health is part of the root cause of this gun violence. When you have a fatherless home, and ladies and gentlemen, I did this already on a radio show, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. I talked about fatherless homes, and you need to understand the government is the one that began to reward women to not have a man in the home. Again, giving them money to help survive in life as long as there wasn't a man in the home. I forgot what year that was.
I don't recall myself.
But I forgot what the act was. If Victor was here, he would know, right?
Yeah,
that kid retains everything. But either way, guess what? It started with the government already encouraging fatherless homes. And then here we are. I mean, you know the statistics when it comes to this. But at the end of the day, I think, Dave, this is going to be something we're probably going to be dealing with for a very long time. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
This gun right situation. And, do you ever think they'll be able to take it away?
But do you... no, but we're starting to go down that slippery slope.
Yeah.
I believe, when you hear people say, well, I'd be okay with more background check, you start, just kind of chipping it away. We all know where that starts, where that stops, right? Because if we remember, how did we get to where abortion became so common? It didn't start out that way. It was supposed to be very rare, right? And look how we ended up, 50 years later with abortion, right? Same thing with this gun right situation. We start chipping away, and eventually one day we're unarmed.
Yeah.
And the government and the criminals are the only ones who are armed.
Well, okay, so let's just think about this for a moment. Because Austin and I, my son, we had a little debate about this, that he felt like, there needed to be better background checks. There needed to be this red flag law. There need to be these things. And guess what? I understand that. I think it's great. And yes, I think there needs to be extensive background checks. But again, ladies and gentlemen, hear me loud and clear. You can do all the background checks. You can do all the information. But those people that have mental health issues, those people that want to kill people because they are not right in their minds, can still get a gun.
They will get a gun.
I'm just saying, I don't care how much you try to protect it. If they want to get a weapon to kill somebody, they're going to get the weapon. So how do you solve it? You've got to go to the root of the issue.
Exactly.
And that is get back to the family, get fathers back in the home, get God back in schools, get prayer back in schools, get people back into church. And listen, church don't solve all your problems. That's another misconception.
Right.
It's not that church solves all your problems, but I'll tell you who does. Jesus.
Absolutely.
The church don't solve any of the problems. Jesus is the one that solves the problems. But even then, there are still people with issues. There are still people with human emotion. And so you still have to have a discipline about yourself, right? You still have to discipline. You have to have strength under control. You got to control yourself.
Fired up.
You don't even know what to think, do you?
I have a lot of thoughts, but there's not enough time.
Well, we got a couple minutes. How many thoughts you got?
Well, it's once again,
some.
we've discussed this for
ages,
decades, right? And another thing that's really at the top of the list of reasons why are all these video games that immerse our youngest, brightest, sponge-like minds into a world of death, those types of things. They want to live their life like it's a video game.
Yeah.
And you can get a do-over, right?
Yeah, reset.
And that's not real life, right?
No.
And we know that this is, and of course, that's a big industry, and they fight that. Follow the money. That's what I say a lot. Follow the money and see who's behind all of these bad things that are happening. Do they really want to fix the problem?
No.
Does the mental health industry really want to fix that problem with our youngsters, our brightest minds suffering with mental health? Do they really want to fix that? What do you think?
No. I don't think they do want to fix it. The government?
Well, whoever's behind the mental health industry.
Oh, the mental health?
The big pharma.
Big pharma, no. They want to just pop pills. They just want people to be pills, sedated, controlled by a pill.
Right.
Because that's the easy, quick fix. Let's give them a pill. Let's tell them they got ADHD or ADD, or let them know they have, whatever it is, whatever disease is out there, whatever thing is out there. Let's just call them. And I'll tell you what really helps is that the parent spanks the child's hind end. There's a thought.
That's good medicine right there.
I mean, you go back to the word of God, spare the rod, you spoil the child. Spare the rod, you spoil the child, which means if you don't discipline your children with the rod of correction out of love, not anger, but out of love, to break that child's will, because children have a strong will. You don't want to break their spirit, but you definitely want to break the will of disobedience. This is what we got to get back to. And it's going to take people like us that are out here fighting fighting this fight. We can't give up. We cannot stop. We cannot quit. We have to keep moving forward. We have to start somewhere. And this, my friends, is where we start. All right. We got to take another break already. We're already moving into the last segment.
Wow.
And don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about critical race theory.
Whoa.
Critical race theory. I did a short video on it, but we're going to talk a little more. We'll see you back here in just a minute. Don't you dare go anywhere. All right. We are back, and we are wrapping this whole thing up with one last segment. And in the break, we actually discussed this, because we have critical race theory to talk about, but there's one other subject that I actually forgot about, and that is what we're going to talk about right now. And it is an article that somebody sent me and said, hey, I'd like for you to basically talk about this particular article and let me know your thoughts, yada, yada, yada. And here is the headline. It is on the Orange County Register News, whatever that is, whether it's a newspaper or their online paper or whatever. It says, World Surf League sets policy allowing trans women to compete, women surfers to compete. And then Bethany Hamilton says that she won't compete if they allow trans women to compete in the surf league, in the World Surf League. So obviously, they're trying to cancel Bethany Hamilton. Many of you know her. She's one of the world surfers. She's been surfing for over 15 years, very, very well known because she's the one that got bit by the shark and it bit her arm off, and she began to still surf and became this world-class surfer. She's also a believer. She's a Christian.
Right.
And she's just standing up for what she believes. But of course, you know, those crazy people out there think that if you stand up for what you believe, that they need to cancel you. So I think the question is, Dave, because when I read the article and it says that the pro surfing governing body, they are going to allow surfers who have low testosterone levels to compete in women's divisions. And it stirred this firestorm of debate. And it happened on Monday the 6th, whenever all this went down. But I think, to me, I just can't comprehend this. I can't comprehend why a man that wants to be a woman wants to compete in women's sports. You said something through the break that was pretty interesting because, you know, they want to be all inclusive. They want what did it say down here? They want to have
Equal
fairness.
access.
Yes, equal access, fairness. And I'm like, there's nothing fair at all. You got to be a complete idiot to think that it's fair that a man that wants to be a woman that competes in a woman's sport is fair. There is nothing fair about that.
I just, and as we talked, I don't understand why they even want to compete against a woman. What is it that makes that better from them? I can't think like them because I'm not one of them, but I wonder in my mind, what is it that makes them so headstrong that they have to do this, that they have to force their way into doing this when there's such backlash against it?
I mean, and like you said, I don't know what they're thinking. I have my ideals of what I think the reason why they're that way. Others would probably tell you, well, because they think they're women, then they want to compete in women's sports. So they try to make it super logical. In my mind, if you're a man wanting to become a woman and wanting to compete in women's sports, the way I see it, and this is just my perspective, is you're just not manly enough to beat the men in your group, so you just become a woman so you can be the top dog.
Because it makes you feel better.
It makes you feel better. They're already completely out of whack anyway with their feelings. I'm not saying they are whacked out. Well, I am a little bit, but I don't mean it in a bad way. What I'm saying is there's a real issue with identity because of the way somebody's made them feel their whole life. They don't feel, accepted. They don't feel, like they are part of the group or whatever it is. They don't feel good enough. And because of what society says you have to be a woman, which is a bunch of crap, because if God made you a woman, then every woman is beautiful in their own way. But again, they don't have that identity in Christ. Therefore, they're finding their identity in many other things. And so when you get into that type of community through my research, it's simple. If you don't feel accepted with one group of people and this other group will accept you a certain way, then you change to be that thing so you can be accepted into that group.
Exactly.
And so that's what I think is happening with the trans people is they're not accepted in one group, so they change who they are so they can be accepted in a different group.
And so then when they decide that they want to compete in that group, when they win, that bolsters that thought and that feeling, right? So once again, would you say transgenderism is a mental issue?
Absolutely.
So we've come back this.
100%.
You notice how we have these issues that continue to follow this same pattern, right? Mental health.
Yep. Mental health issues are
gender
rampant.
Dysphoria.
Yep.
And the whole thing there, right?
Every bit of it. So one of the things that you had said, and I think Bethany is saying here, is she says, I personally think the best solution would to be create a separate division so all can have an opportunity to showcase passion and talent. Arguing there's glimpses of male body dominance in other sports such as running and swimming. But Joanna Hoffman, the director of communications for Athlete Alley, argues the actual threats to women surfing are issues such as unequal pay, sexual abuse and lacking media coverage. Here we go again. Listen, I get it. Is it really fair that, like for instance, there's a big old deal right now about women's basketball, the WNBA. They don't get paid as much as the men.
Right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, do I need to help you again, get you to understand this? There's nothing, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying they're not good enough or whatever. But the bottom line is people don't want to watch women basketball. So there's no money in it. How are you going to pay these women a bunch of money when you're not generating the income?
Right.
But you go to a men's basketball, there's a lot more people interested in that. Therefore, there's more money in it, and that's why they get paid more. You can't pay somebody something that's not there.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
So
they
I mean,
have to have revenues from somewhere to.
You got to have. So this whole lack of media coverage, lack of women's sports, it's not that women aren't important. It's not that they're not that. It's not that they're not good. It's just, I guess, I don't even know what the real reason is. I mean, I don't go out and watch just women's sports. It's not my thing, right? But I also don't watch basketball.
Right.
I like football, I like baseball, hockey, but there's soccer. Oh man, all these things, I just don't understand it. But this transgender thing, these transgender men, wanting to be in women's sports it just blows my mind. I don't understand it at all. And it says that there's studies that there's no evidence of biological advantages amongst trans women who have undergone testosterone suppression.
That's a wacky doodle right there.
Because what they're saying is basically when you're a man, you have high testosterone. And when you're transforming into a woman, they lower the testosterone so you don't have facial hair, whatever those things are, And so as long as those levels of testosterone are at a certain place, then you're like a woman. So then then biologically you're not stronger, you don't have the ability like a man would in certain areas. And listen, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, yes, there are some women stronger than some men. No doubt in my mind. But if you take the athletes as an average, MMA fighters, for instance, you put Conor McGregor in with a Ronda Rousey, and Conor McGregor is going to kill her. He's going to whoop the snot out of her. He just has way different strength than she does. It's not that she isn't strong. I'm just saying it's different. This doesn't mean it's a bad thing necessarily, right? That's why you have women's sports, and that's why you have men's sports.
Exactly.
So it is fair and equal.
And if he was raised correctly, he wouldn't want to fight a woman.
and I'm not saying he does. I'm just giving the example.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's the same thing as girls competing in boys wrestling.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a whole other topic, but they're not trans. There's no sexual or gender dysphoria in that. But is it right?
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
No.
I don't believe it's proper and right, because as we're raising young men, we want young men to honor the opposite sex.
Yeah.
And fighting and beating and doing the things that you do when you're competing against each other generally doesn't lead in that direction.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a whole nother topic.
It is, but I'm not a fan of girls in high school wrestling against the boys.
Right.
Not a fan of it. I wouldn't want to wrestle against her. Number one, I would want to lose.
Right, exactly.
I wouldn't want to lose.
Exactly.
Which is funny, but it's true.
Yeah.
No man would want to lose.
Right.
And that's not the main reason, obviously. It's just, I've been taught that you respect women. You don't fight women. You don't treat them like you do a man. And therefore, if I'm wrestling with them, I wouldn't want to hurt them.
Right.
Because that's the way I've been trained. That's the way I've been raised. Oh, man. Where is it? This is the end of the show right here, dude.
Oh, my goodness.
This thing is over. Well, next week, I hope you come back. We might talk about critical race. We have other subjects. But hey, Dave, thanks for being on here. Ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next time.